Her fingers closed around my wrist next to the punch table, and her name tag was flipped backward, and before I ever got a clear look at her face, she leaned in close enough that I could smell rain on her coat and said it low and fast. Don't ask questions. You're my husband for the next 2 hours. I looked down at her hand, then up at her. Dark hair with one streak of silver she hadn't bothered to hide, a burgundy dress, and eyes doing that thing eyes do when a person is standing perfectly still and falling at the same time. And then the gym doors opened behind me, and half the room turned the way a field turns toward weather, and in walked Blake Sutton. 25 years older, still built like the trophy case was his personal mirror, laughing at something before anyone had said anything funny. The woman's grip tightened 1 degree, and I heard myself say, "Well then, you'd better stop calling me sir. Here's the part you need to understand before anything else. 25 years ago, that gymnasium was the exact place I learned I was nobody. And it took this stranger 1 sentence to hand me the only title I'd ever wanted in it. Let me back up. My name is Dean Whitaker. I'm 43 years old, and I restore old houses for a living. The ones with the sagging porches and the water damage and the for sale signs that have gone gray in the yard. The ones everybody drives past and says somebody should just tear that down. That's where I come in. I make my living on one stubborn belief, and it's this. Almost nothing is actually beyond saving. Most things are just waiting for one person to look at them properly. I'm good at it. My hands know wood the way some men know card games. What I have never been good at, not once, not for a single afternoon of my life, is being looked at properly myself. In high school, I was the shop kid. Sawdust in my hair, a locker by the boiler room, and a nickname Blake Sutton's crowd gave me sophomore year that I won't dignify by repeating, except to say it stuck for 3 years and it was designed to remind me I was furniture. Background. The kind of kid the yearbook spells wrong. I hadn't planned on coming to the reunion at all. My wife left 3 years ago. Karen. She wasn't cruel about it. She just sat me down one night and said, "Dean, you restore everything except your own life," and packed a bag. And honestly, the worst part was that I didn't have a comeback, because you can't argue with a licensed contractor's assessment of a condemned property. So no, I wasn't there for the people. I came for the building. The district's tearing the school down next spring, and in the shop hallway of that building there's a bench I built when I was 17. Mr. Alvarez, the shop teacher, God rest him, made me sand it until my fingerprints nearly came off. It's the first thing I ever made that outlived the class it was made for. I wanted to stand in front of it one more time before they turned it into a parking lot. That's who I was, holding a plastic cup of punch I didn't want, planning my exit, when a stranger took my wrist and married me. Now, before I tell you why she picked me, out of a gymnasium holding 200 people, and why the answer to that question is the reason I believe what I'm about to tell you actually means something, let me ask you one thing. If you believe the people nobody notices are keeping score of every small kindness the world forgets, tap that subscribe button, because this channel is built out of stories exactly like this one, and I'd hate for you to miss what's coming. Alright, back to the gym. Blake Sutton crossed that floor like a man collecting rent. Handshakes, shoulder claps, that booming laugh, and I understood immediately why he could, because the banner over the stage said this whole reunion was sponsored by Sutton Auto Group. He'd bought the night. He owned the room the same way he'd owned the hallways, and he was coming straight for us. Marin, he said her name the way you'd pick up something you'd left in storage. You actually came. I didn't think you had it in you. So her name was Marin. I filed it away, half a second before I'd need it. Blake, she said. Her voice was level. Only I could feel her pulse going in her wrist, because somewhere in the last 10 seconds, her hand had slid down and her fingers had laced through mine, cold as porch iron in January. His eyes went to our hands, then to me. And Blake Sutton looked me dead in the face he'd spent 3 years using for target practice, and said the single cruelest thing he could have said, without even knowing he was doing it. Sorry, friend, have we met? 25 years I'd carried that man's voice around in my head, and I hadn't made enough of a dent in his life for him to carry mine for a weekend. Dean, I said, the husband. And I want to tell you I said it smooth, like an actor. The truth is, I said it the way I'd say, load-bearing wall, flat and certain. Because the one thing restoring houses teaches you is that when something is about to come down, you don't flinch, you brace. Husband. Blake's smile recalculated, the way a salesman's does when the numbers move. Marin Holt got married. Nobody told me. There's a growing list of things nobody tells you, Blake, she said. Enjoy the reunion. It's a beautiful banner. He stood there, one beat too long, the way men like him do. then peeled off toward the stage, already laughing at the next thing. And Marin Holt let out a breath that shook at the end of it, and turned to face me. And up close, I watched the panic drain out, and the shame flood in to replace it. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I saw him come in and I grabbed the nearest. I panicked. Give me 1 minute and I'll disappear, and you can tell everyone your wife had a headache. He's watching us in the trophy case glass," I said quietly. "Don't look." Reflection, 10 o'clock. Because he was. Of course he was. Men like Blake never stop checking the mirror, and every reflective surface in a room belongs to them. "You picked a husband, ma'am. I'd say you're stuck with me for the full 2 hours." She laughed. It came out cracked down the middle, like a board with a knot in it, and something about that sound decided the whole rest of my night. I got us 2 fresh cups of punch and steered us toward the quiet end of the gym, and that's when the first mine went off. Because here's the thing about a reunion that neither of us had thought through in the moment. Everybody in that room knew me. Dean Whitaker. Marcus Bell, my oldest friend on this earth, the only person from this school I still fished with, came at us with his arms already open. 25 years and you finally show your face. "Man, I told Sandra you'd come. Hey, did you hear about—" Wait. His eyes landed on our joined hands. Marcus knew about Karen. Marcus had helped me move Karen's boxes. Marcus's mouth opened, and I watched 3 years of my private business get ready to walk out of it, in front of the one person I was pretending for. "Marcus," I said, "you remember my wife, Marin? I have known that man since we were 9, and I will love him until they bury me for what he did next," which was to pause for exactly 1 carpenter's measure of a second, look at her, look at me, and say, "Course I do." The wedding was beautiful. I cried like a baby. He raised his cup to her and moved on, and as he passed behind her shoulder, he caught my eye with a look that said, "You owe me a story and a boat trip," and I gave him a look back that said, "You'll get both." "Your friend is a terrible liar," Marin murmured. "He's a wonderful liar," I said. "He just respects me too much to be smooth about it." And she laughed again, and this time it wasn't cracked, and we were off. You'd think the hard part of being someone's fake husband is the lying. It isn't. We built the marriage the way you'd expect, in whispers between handshakes, how we met, when, where. Keep it simple, keep it boring. Boring is believable. No. The hard part was that somewhere around the 3rd conversation with a half-remembered classmate, we stopped rehearsing a marriage and started having an evening. A real one. The kind where you keep finding the other person's eyes across a conversation just to trade a private verdict on it. She was funny in the way that only quiet people are funny. 3 words at exactly the right moment, placed like a shim. She noticed everything. She knew which couples were fighting from 30 feet by their punch cups. And whenever Blake's laugh went off across the gym like a car alarm, I'd feel her flinch, and I'd move half a step closer, not touching, just closer, the way you'd stand a little upwind of someone in the cold. It was during the slow lap around the gym that I finally asked, "So Blake?" She was quiet for a moment. "We got engaged 11 years ago after his first divorce. I was doing bookkeeping for one of his dealerships." She turned her cup slowly. "You know how a man like that loves you? Like a trade-in. You're the newest thing on the lot right up until you're not. It took me 4 years to understand that the problem wasn't my mileage." She glanced toward the stage, where he was holding court. "I left. He told the whole town I'd had a breakdown. And the thing about a man who sponsors everything is that everyone finds it easier to believe him than to lose him. My own sister asked me if I'd gotten help. Her jaw set. I moved 2 towns over and rebuilt my whole life from the studs, and when the invitation came, I decided I was going to walk into this gym with my head up and prove it didn't matter anymore." She exhaled, and then he walked in, and 11 years of head up disappeared in about 4 seconds, and I grabbed a stranger's wrist like a crazy person. "From the studs?" I repeated. "What? You rebuilt from the studs? That's a restorer's phrase. Most people say from scratch." I shrugged. "From scratch means you threw the whole thing away. From the studs means you kept what was sound and rebuilt everything else around it. It's harder. It's also the only way the good bones survive." End quote. I looked at her. "For whatever a fake husband's opinion is worth, I don't think you grabbed my wrist like a crazy person. I think you did it like a person who knows exactly what's worth keeping and got tired of carrying it alone for one night." Marin Holt stopped walking. In the middle of that gymnasium, she stopped, and she looked at me, really looked, the way I'd waited my whole life to be looked at, and she said quietly, "You still don't recognize me, do you?" The floor tilted about 5 degrees. We were in the same graduating class, Dean. I sat 2 rows behind you in English for 2 years. She turned her name tag around. Marin Holt, class of, our class of. Nobody remembers me. I was 110 pounds of straight A's and thrift store cardigans. And I ate lunch alone. And by senior year, I'd gotten so good at being invisible that teachers marked me absent while I was sitting in the front row. She smiled, and it didn't hurt any less to look at for being gentle. You'd think it would feel safe, being invisible. It doesn't. It feels like practice for not existing. Then why? I said. And my mouth had gone dry. Out of 200 people in this room, did you grab me? Come with me, she said. I'll show you. She led me out of the gym, down the long hallway, past the trophy case and the gray lockers, to the shop wing, to the bench. My bench, still bolted to the wall outside the shop room door, 40 inches of oak I'd sanded until my hands bled, still standing square after 25 years of teenagers because 17-year-old me had overbuilt it like a bridge. She sat down on it like she'd done it 10,000 times. Junior year, she said. Homecoming. Blake's table nominated me for the court. You probably don't even remember it happening. It was a whole production. They got half the class to vote for it. The invisible girl on the homecoming court. And I was stupid enough for about 6 hours to believe it was real. Her voice stayed level the whole way through, which is how I knew exactly how much it cost. They announced the court at the Friday assembly, and when they called my name, that whole gymnasium laughed. Not everyone. It doesn't take everyone. It only takes enough. And I walked out of that assembly and I got as far as this hallway because it was the only hallway nobody used. And I sat down on this bench, and I came apart. The hallway was very quiet. Somewhere back in the gym, a song from the year we graduated was playing, muffled, like something underwater. And then a boy came out of the shop room, she said, sawdust all over his shirt, and he didn't ask me what was wrong, which was the only mercy I could have survived right then. He just sat down on the other end of the bench, and after a while he took something out of his pocket and set it down between us. And he said, I make these when the day comes out wrong. This one came out better than the day did. You keep it. And he went back into the shop. She opened her purse. And the bell rang, and I never talked to him again. And 400 people spent 25 years forgetting I exist. She set it on the bench between us. Exactly between us. Exactly where I'd set it down a lifetime ago. A small carved wooden bird. A wren, wings folded, no bigger than a bar of soap. One of the dozens I used to whittle out of scrap pine when Mr. Alvarez wasn't looking. Practice pieces, throwaways. The edges were worn smooth and dark, the way wood only gets from 25 years of a human hand returning to it. Every purse I have ever owned, Marin said, has had this bird in it. It's been to 2 funerals, 1 wedding that shouldn't have happened, and every job interview of my life. When I left Blake, I had 1 bag in the car, and I stood in that driveway and went through it in the rain to make sure the bird made it out. She finally looked up at me. Tonight, when he walked through that door and every light in my body shorted out, I turned around to run, and there you were, Dean, standing by the punch table with sawdust practically still on you, 25 years later, and you didn't recognize me, and it didn't matter. I wasn't grabbing a stranger. I was grabbing the only person in that entire building who was ever kind to me in it. I've just been waiting a very long time to give the kindness back. I'm going to be honest with you about what that moment did to me, because you've stayed this long and you've earned the truth. I don't remember it. That's the part that took me apart on that bench. The single most important thing I have ever done for another human being. The thing that got carried through funerals and a getaway bag in the rain. And I did it without noticing, on an ordinary Tuesday, and threw the memory away like a practice piece. And all those years I'd spent absolutely certain I was a man who left no mark on anybody. Marin, I managed. The worst day of your life. And I can't even remember it. I know, she said. That's what made it kind. You didn't do it to be remembered. You did it because it was Tuesday, and someone was crying on your bench. She picked up the bird and put it back in her purse, deliberate as a vow. Blake remembers nothing, because nothing ever mattered to him. You remember nothing, because you never once understood that you mattered. Those are not the same thing, Dean. They have never been the same thing. And that is exactly when the hallway door banged open, and Blake Sutton's voice arrived before he did. There they are, the happy couple. He came down the hall with 2 of his old teammates trailing him like exhaust, and his salesman smile had a new edge on it. Funny thing, I got to asking around, because Whitaker, it finally came to me. Shop kid, boiler room lockers. He snapped his fingers at the memory of my nickname, and used it, casual as a coin toss, and one of the teammates chuckled on cue, like it was still sophomore year. And here's the thing, buddy. Marcus's wife tells Sandra everything, and Sandra can't hold a secret with 2 hands. There's no wedding, there's no wife. You 2 are playing dress up. He spread his arms, delighted, loud enough to carry back up the hallway where a few curious classmates had drifted in behind him. So, which one of you wants to tell me why? I felt Marin go rigid beside me. 11 years of head up, about to be spent at once. And I stood, and I felt calm come down over me, like the quiet in a house when the work is finally sound. You're right, I said. We're not married. The hallway went pin drop. 2 hours ago, this woman took my wrist and asked me to stand next to her, because the last time you were in a room together, you spent 4 years teaching everyone she loved not to believe her. And the reason she asked me, Blake, is this bench. I put my hand on it. I built it 25 feet from your locker, and you never saw me do it. Junior year, your table put her on the homecoming court as a punchline, and a gymnasium full of people laughed, and you never thought about it again. She sat right here while it broke her. I know, because I was here too. We were both here, Blake. Half this school was here, the whole time. The quiet ones, the furniture, taking notes. I looked at the classmates gathered behind him, and more coming, drawn down the hallway, the way people are drawn to a true thing being said out loud. You didn't recognize me tonight, and you didn't remember what you did to her, and you sponsored a banner with your name on it, so 200 people would spend tonight looking at you. And not one person in this hallway is looking at you right now, and they weren't. That's the part I'll keep until I die. Nobody was looking at Blake Sutton. They were looking at her. And then Marcus's voice came from the back, easy as a Sunday. For what it's worth, the wedding really was beautiful. I just haven't seen it yet. Somebody laughed, then several somebodies, and none of it was aimed at Marin. And I watched a man who owned the banner and the room and the night discover that a reputation is just a house nobody's inspected. Blake opened his mouth, found nothing on the lot, and left with his exhaust trailing after him. The reunion ended the way they do. Streamers coming down, punch bowls emptying. She walked me to the parking lot, and under the same gymnasium lights that had watched us both be nobody, Marin Holt said, "Well, your 2 hours are up. You're a free man, Dean Whitaker." "Here's the problem with that," I said. "I restore things for a living, and I've got 25 years of deferred maintenance on the best thing I ever made without noticing. That's not a 2-hour job, ma'am. I'd have to see you Saturday. And probably every Saturday after, until it's sound." She looked at me for a long moment, then she reached into her purse and took out the wren and pressed it into my palm and closed my fingers around it. The exact gesture, returned across 25 years. "Bring it back Saturday," she said. "It doesn't like being away from me. I'll give you the rest the way it actually went, which is slowly, because that's how you know it's real." 1 month in, she stood in my workshop for the first time and cried at the smell of it, and couldn't explain why, and didn't have to. 6 months in, I carved her a second bird, and she informed me the first one was not retiring, it was being promoted. And in the spring, when they tore the old school down, the district let me salvage one item before the machines came. You already know what I took. That bench sits on the front porch of the farmhouse I finished restoring last fall, the one we live in now, and Marin Whitaker drinks her coffee on it every single morning, and it is still square, because the boy who built it overbuilt everything he was afraid to lose. We got married on that porch. She didn't carry flowers. She carried a small wooden wren, wings folded, worn dark by 25 years of her hand. People at the reunion thought they watched a stranger grab the nearest man in a panic. But I've done the math since, the way you measure a room twice. And here's what's true. There were 40 people standing closer to that door than I was. She crossed the entire gymnasium to reach me. She'd recognized me before I ever put down my punch cup. So no, she didn't grab a stranger, and the longer I live, the more I understand that she wasn't even asking me to rescue her. She'd rebuilt herself from the studs years before. That woman didn't need saving from Blake Sutton or anybody else. What she did that night was walk across a gym and hand a man who was certain he'd left no mark on this world the proof that he had, carried in a purse, for 25 years, waiting for him. I spent my whole life restoring things people gave up on. It never once occurred to me that I was one of them. If somebody, sometime, remembered a kindness you did that you'd completely forgotten, or if you're the one who's been carrying a small kindness around for years, I want to hear about it, because I don't believe those things are ever really lost. Tell me your story down in the comments, and tell me where in the world you're listening from tonight. I read every single one, and it amazes me how far these stories travel. Somebody wrote in last week who still has a note a stranger left on their windshield 19 years ago, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. And be honest with me before you go. If a stranger took your wrist at a reunion, in front of everyone who knew you when, and asked you to be their husband, their wife, for just 2 hours, would you have stood up straight and said yes, like I did? Or would you have handed back your punch cup and stayed furniture? There's no wrong answer. There's only the one you'd have to live with. If this story reached you tonight, do me one small kindness, tap that like button so it finds the next person who needs it, and hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because I'm here every week with a new story about the kind of love that's been keeping score of every good thing you forgot you did. Somebody out there remembers you. Good night.